Yeah, the countdown to my professional obliteration was 5 minutes. My husband's father, Arthur Vance, the CEO of Apex Innovations, delivered the sentence in front of the entire executive board. I was expected to shatter. Instead, a smile found my lips, and I heard myself say, "Thank you." 22 colleagues, one by one, quietly rose from their desks and followed me out. Zoe Reed, the architect of my demise, smirked with triumph, a look that lasted only until the company's chief legal counsel went ashen and choked out, "Get our lawyer on the line." Now. 4 minutes and 30 seconds left, Arthur announced to the room, his gold watch flashing as he tapped its crystal face. I carried on packing the contents of my desk drawer, lifting out 6 years of my life. The project schematics, the team photos from our all-night launch parties, and the small, unassuming backup drive containing the DNA of every system I had personally built for Apex Innovations. The dozen executives in the glass-walled conference room watched me, their silence a heavy blanket. Zoe Reed, my protégé, my replacement, lounged back in her chair, feigning disinterest by studying her perfectly manicured nails. She was convinced she had won. 4 minutes, Arthur's voice barked again, laced with the authority he wielded like a weapon. That's when I saw it. Ben Carter, my lead engineer, standing up from his workstation just outside the conference room. His laptop bag was already in his hand. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to explain how we arrived at this moment, how a meticulously planned, 3-week-long betrayal culminated in my father-in-law timing my corporate execution like a bag of microwave popcorn. Before we get into the details of the fallout, I want to say how much I appreciate you being here. If you believe that true dedication and skill should always triumph over petty office politics, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. It really helps bring these kinds of stories to a wider audience. Now let's unpack the disaster Arthur had so carefully orchestrated. It all truly began 3 weeks earlier at the obligatory Sunday dinner at the Vance family estate. It was a weekly performance where we all played our assigned roles in a drama that had long since lost its appeal. I showed up with my husband Leo and a freshly baked apple pie, the kind with the intricate lattice top that took me hours to get just right. My mother-in-law, Isabel, always insisted I bring it, yet she'd never once acknowledged that I was the one who made it, as if it had simply willed itself into existence in her kitchen. "Another banner quarter for Apex Innovations," Arthur declared, standing at the head of a massive mahogany table that could seat 20 but was currently occupied by just the 4 of us, lost in its cavernous splendor. He held up his crystal glass, the amber whiskey inside glinting under the light of Isabel's prized Venetian chandelier. "We're cornering the market because I have an eye for talent, and I know precisely where to place it." His hand came down on Leo's shoulder, heavy with the combined weight of expectation and entitlement. My husband practically beamed under the spotlight, even though his primary contribution to the company was possessing the correct surname and occupying a chair in meetings. No one brought up the sterling account I had single-handedly rescued just 2 nights prior, or the Atlas Industries deal I had salvaged by working 3 straight weekends, or the fact that while Arthur was at his country club's monthly whiskey tasting, pontificating on notes of oak and arrogance, I was in the server room, personally rebuilding our entire network infrastructure after a catastrophic failure. "You look exhausted, Clara dear," Isabel had cooed, her fingers laden with enough diamonds to cover my entire department's payroll, brushing my arm for a fleeting moment. "You should really think about a better work-life balance. Appearances are so important, especially for a woman in a leadership role." I bit back a retort and focused on my dry, overcooked salmon. The truth was, I looked exhausted because I had been awake for nearly 36 hours. But saying so would have only confirmed their silent accusation that I couldn't handle the pressure, that I was, as Zoe would later so carefully phrase it, overwhelmed. My morning ritual with Leo had become a case study in marital erosion. Every day was a carbon copy of the last. He would wrestle with the high-end espresso machine his parents had gifted us, producing a brew that consistently tasted of bitter disappointment, all while scrolling through sports headlines on his phone. "Big day ahead?" he'd asked on that specific Tuesday, 2 weeks before the world imploded. "I should hear back about the director role today." I saw his reflection grow taut in the polished steel of the microwave door. Ah, yes, the promotion. He took a long sip of his failed cappuccino. Dad was saying how impressive Zoe has been lately. She's been staying late, volunteering for extra projects. My fingers froze over my keyboard. Zoe Reed. The same Zoe who clocked in at 9:30 on the dot and was out the door by 5 o'clock sharp. The Zoe I had been personally mentoring for 3 months at Arthur's specific directive. "She just needs a guide," he'd told me. "Someone to show her the Apex way." And so I had. I'd opened my playbook, shared my most effective strategies, and explained the nuances of our client relationships with the patience of a preschool teacher. She had diligently taken notes in her expensive leather-bound portfolio, asking questions that, in hindsight, felt disturbingly probing. How do you triage system-wide failures? What's your exact data recovery protocol? Who holds the master admin credentials? I had mistaken her for ambitious. It turned out she was just building an arsenal. The server migration crisis should have been my crowning achievement. A week before Arthur would slam his hand on that conference room table, our entire data framework required an emergency transfer, 40 terabytes of critical information, an 8-hour window, and absolutely no room for error. Naturally, everything that could go wrong did. Corrupted data packets, failing backup arrays, and a power fluctuation that our surge protectors should have made impossible. By 10 p.m., I had to trigger my emergency plan, calling in my entire team. Ben arrived first, the program from his daughter Sophie's piano recital still pinned to his shirt. "She gets it," he said with a quiet sigh, though I saw him sneaking glances at videos his wife was sending him from the auditorium. Maya came next, her voice thick with apology as she spoke to her husband on the phone. I know, it's our anniversary. I promise I'll make it up to you." She hung up and immediately dove into lines of code as if she were defusing a bomb. David Chen, Chloe Evans, the Hayes twins who seemed to communicate via a shared telepathic link, they all showed up without a single complaint. The conference room transformed into our command center, a landscape of laptops, energy drink cans, and cold Chinese food we were too busy to eat. "We're like some bizarre tech support-themed cult," David had quipped around 2 in the morning, trying to eat noodles with one hand while debugging with the other. "Yeah," Chloe had shot back, "but at least we chose each other." Those words felt strangely prophetic now. We saved it all. Every last file, every client record, every contract. Arthur Vance would never have a clue that his company had been just a few keystrokes away from losing tens of millions in data and priceless client trust. That was my job. I made catastrophes disappear so silently, no one even knew they had happened. Then came the email, the stray bullet that laid the entire conspiracy bare. I was at my desk at 11:47 p.m., putting the finishing touches on my presentation for the director promotion when it landed in my inbox. From Zoe Reed. To me. Only it wasn't meant for me. "Arthur, as we discussed, I've successfully resolved the Sterling situation. The client was deeply impressed with my crisis management skills. I feel this is the right time to formalize the restructuring. She seems overwhelmed and has been arriving at the office looking exhausted most days. I believe some fresh leadership is exactly what the department needs." My vision swam as I read it once, twice, a third time. The Sterling situation. The very same account I had personally managed while Zoe was posting pictures from a rooftop yoga class on her Instagram. The fire I had put out while she was sound asleep. Without a second thought, some primal survival instinct took over, and I forwarded the email to my personal account. Then I just sat there in my home office, still wearing the coffee-stained blouse from the day before, a cold realization washing over me. To people who had never done the real work, dedication just looked like a weakness to be exploited. 3 minutes, Arthur's voice sliced through my reverie, pulling me back to the present. The executives were still motionless, but through the glass, I could see Maya standing up, then David, then Chloe. One after another, my team, my chosen family, was getting to their feet. 2 minutes, Arthur shouted, but his voice sounded distant as if it were coming from underwater. Through the conference room's glass walls, I could see the entire 15th floor had come to a standstill, a frozen diorama of shock. Chloe Evans had her phone pressed halfway to her ear, her call forgotten. The Hayes twins stood by their desks, their faces mirror images of disbelief. I reached for the frame photo from our last big project launch, the one where we'd all worked for 72 hours straight. As my fingers touched the frame, they brushed against something else, a small USB drive taped to the underside of my desk drawer, the one where I had meticulously backed up every critical email, every document, every piece of evidence I thought might be important someday. Apparently, someday was today. The whole morning had felt wrong, right from the moment I'd swiped my keycard at 6:45 a.m. The security guard, a friendly guy named Frank who usually loved to chat, had suddenly found the floor fascinating. The elevator ride up was eerily silent. The 15th floor itself felt like it was holding its breath. When I got to the conference room to prepare for my presentation, the one showcasing my department's 340% increase in efficiency, Zoe was already there, in my seat, the one I'd staked out 3 years ago because it was the only one that didn't get the blinding morning sun. Her laptop was open, displaying spreadsheets I knew instantly, my department's confidential budget forecasts, the files that lived on a secure server she should have had no way of accessing. "Oh, good morning," she'd chirped, her voice coated in a layer of artificial sweetness. "Arthur asked me to get a head start and review these before the meeting. You don't mind, do you?" The question was a formality. We both knew it. I just stood there, my laptop bag a dead weight on my shoulder, watching her casually scroll through salary figures, project allocations, and vendor agreements. 6 years of my meticulous financial planning laid bare. "How did you get access to these?" I'd asked, my voice tight. She'd looked up then, and for a split second her mask of innocence slipped. A flash of pure, unadulterated satisfaction crossed her face before she rearranged it into a look of helpfulness. "Arthur gave me temporary admin rights to help with the transition." Transition. The word hung in the air between us like a terminal diagnosis. The room had filled up, but the assembly felt all wrong. Mark from finance came in first, clutching his tablet like a life raft and refusing to meet my gaze when I said hello. Then came Helen Marks, our chief legal counsel, a woman who usually radiated an unshakable calm. Today, she kept glancing at her phone, her knuckles white as she gripped her legal pad. Even the coffee situation was off. Normally, the expensive machine would be grinding beans, its aroma filling the air. Today, there was just silence and the faint smell of nervous sweat masked by expensive cologne. I started my presentation anyway. I clicked through the slides, my voice remaining steady, even as the energy in the room grew darker, coalescing into something ominous. "As you can see, we've exceeded every single Q3 target by..." The door didn't just open. It flew inward, the handle slamming against the wall with enough force to chip the paint. Arthur stood in the doorway, his face a shade of crimson that meant his blood pressure medication was losing the battle. His bespoke Italian suit was rumpled, his tie askew. He strode to the table and slammed his palm down, the impact making everyone's coffee cups jump. Helen's actually tipped over, a brown stain spreading across her notes, but she didn't even flinch. "You have 5 minutes to clear your desk." The words floated in the air, nonsensical. My brain refused to assemble them into a coherent thought. I stood there, presentation remote still in my hand, with a graph showing the millions of dollars I had saved the company glowing on the screen behind me. And then I understood the morning's choreography. Why Zoe had my files. Why the executives were avoiding my eyes. Why Helen looked like she was about to be sick. This wasn't a sudden outburst, it was an ambush. I had been brought here for a public execution, and I was the only one who hadn't been given the script. Zoe leaned back in my chair, and I saw the slight, triumphant curl of her lip, the way her shoulders relaxed. She had won. But 20 years in the tech world had taught me one thing. The exact moment you think you've secured victory is often the moment you are most exposed. Mark from finance was frantically tapping at his calculator, a motion I recognized from every budget crisis and contract negotiation I'd ever witnessed. It was the look of someone watching a lot of money begin to evaporate. Helen had her phone out, her thumbs flying across the screen, her face a pale, papery gray. They understood what was happening. I understood something that Arthur and Zoe clearly didn't. Something about employment contracts, termination clauses, and the very, very expensive legal distinction between firing someone in private and publicly humiliating them in front of a dozen witnesses. I calmly set the presentation remote down on the table. My grandmother's voice echoed in my head. She'd survived the Great Depression and raised 6 kids on her own after my grandfather passed. I never once saw her buckle. When they expect you to cry, she'd told me once while peeling potatoes, her hands steady and sure, that's when you stand up the straightest. "Thank you," I said. The words were clear, and to my own surprise, they were genuine. Because in that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. 6 years of pretending the Vance family accepted me. 6 years of Isabel's passive-aggressive barbs about my work ethic while I was quietly saving her husband's company. 6 years of being good enough to solve every crisis, but never quite good enough to belong. Arthur's jaw dropped. He had braced for tears, for begging, for rage. He was not prepared for gratitude. Behind him, several executives exchanged nervous glances. A pen rolled off the table, its clatter echoing like a gunshot in the dead silence. I started packing my box with the same methodical care I used when designing a system architecture. Each item was lifted, considered, and placed inside. The backup drive went in first, followed by the project files, the team photo, the coffee mug with the chip on its rim. "1 minute," Arthur announced, but his voice had lost its sharp edge. Confusion was seeping in, the first hairline crack in his absolute certainty. Through the glass, I saw the motion again. Ben Carter standing at his desk, laptop bag slung over his shoulder. He wasn't packing. He was already packed, waiting. Then Maya stood up. Then David. One by one, like a slow-motion wave gathering momentum, my entire department rose from their desks. Arthur turned to see what I was looking at, and his face drained of color so quickly I thought he might actually collapse. Zoe's expression morphed from triumph to confusion to the first shades of panic. "Time's up," Arthur said, but it sounded more like a question. I lifted my box, its weight both familiar and foreign. 6 years of my life, condensed into what I could carry. As I walked to the door, 2 security guards materialized. Standard procedure for a termination. Tom and Derek. I'd brought them coffee during late-night system upgrades. I knew their kids' names. "Sorry about this, Clara," Tom whispered. "Don't be," I told him, meaning it. "You're just doing your job." We walked through the sea of cubicles toward the elevators, and that's when the music started. The squeak of office chairs being pushed back, the rustle of coats and bags being gathered, the soft, definitive clicks of laptops being closed. Ben fell into step beside me, then Maya, her heels clicking a sharp, determined rhythm on the polished floor. David, Chloe, the Hayes twins moving in perfect unison. By the time we reached the elevator bank, 22 people were marching with me. Tom, the security guard, stopped walking. His hand fell away from my elbow. "In 15 years," he said, his voice thick with a mixture of awe and disbelief, "I have never, ever seen anything like this." Neither had Arthur Vance, whose empire had just begun to crumble, though he wouldn't fully grasp that for another 48 hours. The elevator doors closed, sealing the 23 of us inside. Tom pressed the button for the lobby with a hand that trembled just slightly. No one said a word during the descent. The only sounds were the hum of the elevator and the buzz of a phone. Mine, then Ben's, then Maya's. Like the first few kernels in a pan of popcorn, our phones began to erupt in a symphony of notifications. When the doors opened into the main lobby, we stepped out into the blinding midday sun, the kind of light that makes the world feel surreal and overexposed. Maria at the reception desk shot up from her chair so fast it rolled backward and hit the wall. Gerald, the head of maintenance, stopped mopping and just stared as we filed past. Then, from somewhere near the loading dock, someone began to clap. A slow, rhythmic clap. I couldn't see who it was, but then others joined in until the sound was bouncing off the concrete walls of the parking garage. "This is certifiably insane," Maya whispered beside me. "No," Ben corrected, adjusting his laptop bag. "This is justice." We stood there in the parking lot, 23 of us, blinking in the harsh sunlight, our phones buzzing like a swarm of angry hornets. The Hayes twins were already on their laptops, perched on a concrete divider, their fingers a blur across their keyboards. Chloe had her phone pressed to her ear, presumably explaining to her partner why she was suddenly out of a job at 11:47 on a Tuesday morning. "I should go," I said to the group, my car keys feeling alien in my palm. "We all should," David replied. But no one moved. We were like the survivors of a shipwreck, huddled together on a life raft, not yet ready to lose sight of the sinking vessel. The drive home took exactly 17 minutes. I know because I stared at the car's clock the entire time, my mind a blank. My phone, tossed onto the passenger seat, continued its frantic, buzzing seizure. 3 times I reached for it at a red light, and 3 times I pulled my hand back. Leo's car was in the driveway. Of course it was. He worked from home on Tuesdays and Thursdays, a perk Arthur had bestowed upon his son, but one he would never have extended to me despite my senior role and longer tenure. I sat in my car for a full minute after turning off the engine, listening to the tick of the cooling metal. The house we had bought 3 years ago, with a generous contribution from his parents for the down payment naturally, looked exactly the same as it had when I left that morning. Same Japanese maple in the front yard, same crack in the driveway we were always meaning to fix, same life, except everything was different. Leo met me at the door, his work laptop still in one hand, his face a mask of confusion. Over his shoulder, I could see his home office setup, dual monitors glowing with spreadsheets he likely didn't understand. "Why are you home? Are you feeling sick?" Then his eyes fell to the cardboard box in my arms, and his expression cycled through a series of emotions: confusion, concern, dawning realization, and finally, a flicker of anger. "Dad called," he said, his voice flat. "He said you had a breakdown in the meeting. That you were unstable, started crying. That security had to escort you out." I placed the box on the entryway table his mother had insisted we buy. "He said you've been struggling. That Zoe has had to pick up your slack, cover your mistakes. He said he was left with no other choice." I pulled out my phone, scrolled past the 100+ notifications, and found the forwarded email. Zoe's email, the one where she took credit for my work on the Sterling account, the one that called me overwhelmed, the one that was so clearly just one piece of a much longer, calculated conversation with Arthur. Leo read it. Then he read it again. A muscle in his jaw twitched, a telltale sign he'd inherited from his father that only appeared when the world refused to conform to the narrative he'd been fed. "This is..." He trailed off. "When did she send this?" 3 weeks ago. She sent it to me by mistake instead of your father." His eyes hardened. "And you didn't tell me?" I met his gaze. "Would you have believed me, Leo? Or would you have told me it was just an honest mistake, that your father would never conspire against his own daughter-in-law?" The silence between us was a chasm. He set his laptop down and ran both hands through his hair, another gesture borrowed from his father. "I need to think," he said, grabbing his car keys from the hook by the door. I need to think. Leo. But he was already out the door, its decisive click punctuating the end of our conversation. I stood there in our entryway, still in my work clothes, surrounded by the life we'd built on a foundation of sand. My phone rang, an unknown number. I nearly ignored it, but some mix of exhaustion and morbid curiosity made me answer. Please don't hang up. It was Helen Marks, her voice a frantic whisper. I'm in the executive washroom on 16, the one no one ever uses. Helen, your contract, the hostile termination clause. Arthur never reads the fine print. Legal reviewed it 6 years ago when you were hired, but he just signs where I tell him to sign. Her words came in a torrent. The public humiliation multiplier alone puts your minimum severance at $750,000. But with documented harassment, the public nature of the dismissal, 22 witnesses, we could be talking millions. Why are you telling me this, Helen? There was a pause, the sound of a faucet running in the background. Because in about an hour, Arthur is going to fully comprehend the magnitude of his mistake. And when he does, he's going to need a scapegoat. He'll say I should have warned him. I've worked here 12 years, Clara. I've cleaned up his messes, covered for his temper, his affairs, his disastrous decisions. But this is going to sink him, and he'll try to take me down with him. Can we meet? Tomorrow. Somewhere no one from Apex would ever be caught dead. I have documentation, things you need to see, things that could help us both. The line went dead before I could reply. I stood there, phone in hand, and it immediately buzzed again. A screenshot from David Chen. A Slack channel had been created. The Exodus. It had 247 members before I could shut it down. The messages were a torrent of disbelief, support, and panic. Did that really just happen? 22 people just walked out. What happens to the Sterling project? Who's going to maintain the damn servers? My LinkedIn app showed 47 new connection requests. Emails were pouring in. 3 rival companies had already reached out with some variation of, heard what happened. Let's talk. But one email made me stop breathing. It was from Diana Croft, the legendary venture capitalist who had famously turned down Arthur's pitch for funding 6 months ago, telling him his company lacked visionary leadership. Her message was just 2 sentences long. Your team's loyalty is worth more than Apex's entire market cap. Let's build something. I was reading it for the 3rd time when my doorbell rang. At 9 p.m. Sopenti, Isabel Vance was standing on my porch, her makeup smudged, clutching a manila folder as if it were a venomous snake. May I come in? Isabel asked. For the first time in the 6 years I'd known her, she looked fragile. Not the impeccably polished society matriarch who ruled over charity galas and country club committees, but a woman buckling under a weight she could no longer carry. I stepped aside. She walked into my home, the home she had helped finance but had never made me feel welcome in, and stood awkwardly in the entryway. Leo isn't here, I said. I know. I waited for him to leave. She followed me into the living room and perched on the edge of the sofa, as if poised for a quick escape. Arthur fired his own brother this way 20 years ago, she began, her voice brittle. Edward, he was the CFO, had been there from the start. She opened the folder, revealing yellowed board minutes and old printed-out emails. Edward questioned one of Arthur's expansion plans in a meeting. Didn't even criticize it, just questioned it. Arthur gave him 10 minutes to pack his desk. Our family never recovered. Edward's wife left him. His kids still won't speak to Arthur. 20 years later, and it's still the open wound at every holiday dinner. Why are you telling me this now? Isabel let out a bitter, hollow laugh, nothing like her usual musical chuckle. Because I've spent decades watching my husband destroy people, telling myself it was just business. That powerful man had to be ruthless. But watching him do it to you, someone who saved his company time and again while he was out playing golf, someone who actually made my son happy, even if we never showed our approval, I can't pretend anymore. She pulled out another document. This is from 5 years ago. Michelle Reeves, vice president of marketing, fired for insubordination after she suggested his strategy was outdated. And this, another paper, 3 years ago. James Chin, head of RD, terminated publicly because he got a job offer from a competitor and Arthur wanted to make an example of him. They always choose the easy way out. Isabel continued, looking directly at me now. Arthur and Leo both. They avoid small conflicts by creating catastrophic ones. They would rather burn a relationship to the ground than admit they were wrong. I've enabled it for 35 years, and I am so sorry. Her hug was sudden, fierce, and over in a second. She left the folder on my coffee table and vanished into the night, leaving me with the documented history of a pattern I'd been too close to see. My phone rang at 2:07 a.m. I'd finally drifted off on the couch, still in my work clothes, the contents of Isabel's folder spread out like evidence at a crime scene. "Please tell me you're awake." It was Helen Marks, her voice high-pitched with barely controlled panic. "I am now." Zoe destroyed everything. She was trying to prove she could handle your job, to show Arthur she didn't need any transition. She tried to access the live backup servers and somehow deleted the master client database instead. I sat bolt upright, suddenly wide awake. She deleted the entire customer database? That's not even the worst part. She tried to fix it herself. Didn't call the IT help desk, didn't follow a single protocol. She ran some recovery tools she downloaded from the internet. It corrupted everything. The entire East Coast operation has been offline for 6 hours. They're estimating 14 hours minimum before they can even get partial restoration. The silence stretched as I absorbed the information. Our client database wasn't just a list of names. It was 17 years of purchase histories, custom configurations, relationship management notes, the very DNA of the company. "How much?" I asked, my voice flat. "Conservative estimate? 60 million in immediate losses, not counting the clients who will jump ship, the inevitable lawsuits, the reputational carnage." Helen's voice cracked. "She's been locked in a bathroom crying for the last 2 hours. Arthur has been screaming at everyone. He physically threw a laptop against a wall. Security is on standby." I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just a cold, hollow emptiness. Zoe had orchestrated my humiliation, and now she was drowning in the consequences of her own incompetence. "Helen, you need to document all of it. Every email, every action, every word Arthur says." "I'm already on it. I'm building my own lifeboat." She paused. "Your team could have stopped this." "My team," I replied, "would never have let it happen in the first place." After we hung up, I sat in the dark, watching the first hints of dawn paint the living room walls. Across town, Apex Innovations was hemorrhaging money, while Zoe Reed was learning the hard way that taking credit and taking responsibility were two very different skills. Leo came home at 7 a.m., looking as though he'd spent the night in his car. His shirt was a mess of wrinkles, his hair was sticking up at odd angles, and he smelled of stale whiskey and regret. "The database is gone," he said without any preamble. I heard. "Dad's losing his mind. He's threatening to sue Zoe, but Helen told him he can't because he's the one who gave her the credentials. He's calling emergency board meetings. My mom has had 2 panic attacks." He sank onto the couch beside me, careful not to let our bodies touch. "He wants me to get you to sign an NDA and make this all go away quietly." "Make what go away, Leo? His public humiliation of me? The 22 people who followed me out the door? Or the fact that his hand-picked successor just torched $60 million? Leo scrubbed his face with both hands. "All of it. He's offering the $750 Helen mentioned. Full severance, extended benefits, a glowing letter of recommendation. You just have to sign, agree not to talk about what happened, and accept a 2-year non-compete." "No." "The board is gunning for him, Clara. If you sue, if this gets any louder, he could lose the company." I turned and really looked at my husband. He was a stranger in Leo's skin, speaking with Leo's voice, But the man I thought I had married, the partner who had promised to stand by me, was gone, if he had ever truly existed. He should have thought about that before he gave me 5 minutes to clear out my desk. His face crumpled. I need you to fix this. Those 5 words hung in the air between us like a guillotine. Not, I'm so sorry. Not, he was wrong. Not, I should have defended you. Just another demand that I sacrifice myself for the comfort of the Vance family. I need you to leave, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Leo looked at me, and for a fleeting second, I saw a flicker of awareness, a realization that he had backed the wrong horse. But the Vances didn't admit they were wrong. They just found someone new to blame. He left without another word, and I knew, even before the lawyers were involved, that our marriage was over. By noon, my living room had been transformed into a command center. 22 people, laptops balanced on their knees, sitting on the floor, perched on the arms of chairs, all crowded around my dining room table. Ben's 12-year-old daughter, Sophie, sat in a corner, quietly doing her homework, occasionally glancing up at the controlled chaos with wide, curious eyes. Ascendancy Systems, Maya announced, holding up a napkin with a hastily sketched logo of a stylized bird rising from a fire. It's not subtle, but neither were they. David was a blur of motion on his laptop, domain name secured. All social media handles locked down. I'm also grabbing a few variations before Apex's IT department gets any bright ideas. His husband, James, appeared with a tray of assorted coffee mugs. Supply run is complete. No one builds an empire on an empty stomach. Pizza boxes began to stack up, a sedimentary record of our ambition. The Hayes twins had somehow turned my living room wall into a project management board using an array of colorful, sticky notes. Chloe was already on the phone with her contacts, her voice crisp and professional despite the fact that she was sitting cross-legged on my rug. "We need to file for incorporation," someone said. "On it," replied Ben, whose brother-in-law, it turned out, was a corporate attorney. The air was electric with a mix of desperation and hope. We were no longer just colleagues. We were refugees from a corporate shipwreck, banding together to build a new vessel from the wreckage of the old one. And in that crowded, chaotic room, I felt more at home than I ever had in 6 years at Apex. My phone buzzed at 4:47 p.m., 3 days after my living room became the first headquarters of Ascendancy Systems. It was Robert Hoffman, Arthur's lawyer, calling for the 3rd time that day. "Miss West, mister. Vance has authorized me to increase his offer to the $750,000, stipulated as baseline severance in your contract." His voice was weary, the sound of a man fighting a losing battle. "The baseline assumes a normal termination, Robert," I replied, watching the Hayes twins haul a server rack into what was about to become our actual office, a warehouse space we'd found that afternoon. Being given 5 minutes to clear my desk in front of a dozen witnesses is not normal. Helen Marks can confirm that. The line went silent for a long moment. Ms. Marks is no longer authorized to speak on behalf of Apex Innovations. Of course she wasn't. Arthur's first move was always to shoot the messenger. "Then I guess we'll let a judge decide what's appropriate," I said. "My lawyer will be in touch." I hung up just as a sleek white Tesla pulled into the warehouse parking lot. Diana Croft stepped out, her designer heels clicking on the cracked asphalt as she surveyed our new headquarters with the discerning eye of someone who turned startups into unicorns. The warehouse was a dump, 20,000 square feet of concrete and possibility, smelling faintly of industrial solvent and the ghosts of whatever was made here before us. The fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered, the main loading door didn't seal properly, and there was a suspicious stain on the floor that looked like it had its own zip code. "This is perfect," Diana announced, and she was dead serious. "It's a disaster," Maya countered, gesturing at a ceiling tile that chose that exact moment to give way, releasing a small shower of dust. "No, it's hungry space," Diana said, walking the perimeter. "It wants to become something. You know what Amazon's first office was? A garage. Google's? A garage. Apples. Also a garage. You're already a step up. You've got walls and a roof. She pulled out her phone and made a call. Send the contract over. Yes, the full amount. She looked at me. $4 million in seed funding. I want 20% equity and a seat on the board. Ben nearly fumbled his laptop. You haven't even seen our business plan. I've seen 22 people follow their leader out of a stable, high-paying job into total uncertainty. That's more valuable than any PowerPoint presentation. She paused at the door. Arthur Vance once told me that emotional decisions have no place in business. He said it while turning down my proposal to invest in Apex because he found my negotiating style too aggressive. Funny. His emotional decision to publicly humiliate you just handed me my next billion-dollar company. The next morning, she brought 2 other VCs with her. They toured our disaster of a warehouse, peppered us with questions about scalability and market penetration, and then committed another $2 million on the spot. We hadn't even finished the incorporation paperwork, and we were already valued at $17.5 million. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing, but the call that truly mattered came from Richard Sterling himself, the CEO of Sterling Corp. Clara, I heard about the situation at Apex, he said, his voice grim. I also heard about the database catastrophe. Zoe Reed tried to explain to me yesterday why all of our custom configurations were gone. She actually started crying on a client call. Mr. Sterling, we've worked with your team for 3 years. You personally saved our last product launch. Ben rebuilt our entire integration architecture over a single weekend. Maya found data patterns that boosted our efficiency by 200%. He paused. The contracts follow the talent, Clara, not the building. We're moving our business to Ascendancy Systems, effective immediately. By the end of the day, 3 more clients had called with the same message. Patterson Industries, Morrison Group, Chin Technologies. Combined, they represented $30 million in annual contracts. Each one of them posted an announcement on LinkedIn, a carefully worded statement of corporate speak that did little to hide their disgust with how Apex had treated us. Stock's down another 5%, Chloe announced, refreshing her screen. That's a 15% drop since Tuesday. We were unpacking equipment and assembling desks, real desks this time, bought secondhand from a failed startup, when Leo showed up. He just appeared in the doorway of the warehouse looking smaller, diminished. He was holding a bouquet of red roses. After 6 years of marriage, he still didn't know I was allergic to them, that I preferred wildflowers, a fact I had told him on our 3rd date. Can we talk? He shifted uncomfortably in his pressed khakis and polo shirt, a uniform he had adopted from his father without a second thought. I stepped outside with him, leaving my team to continue building our future. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. Dad is willing to apologize, he said, thrusting the roses toward me like a shield. He'll give you an executive position. A corner office, a 20% raise, full benefits. I didn't take the flowers. He thinks this is about office furniture? It's a good offer, Clara. It's more than fair considering... Considering what, Leo? That he publicly humiliated me? That his new star destroyed the database trying to prove she could handle my job? That 22 people walked out because they witnessed something unforgivable? Leo placed the roses on the hot asphalt between us, where they immediately began to look sad and out of place. He's my father. And I was your wife, I said, hearing the finality in my own voice. Past tense. You made it past tense the moment you came home and asked me to swallow my dignity for your family's comfort. His face crumpled, the first sign of genuine emotion I'd seen from him in days. You're giving up on us? On our marriage? Your father didn't break us, Leo. You did. When you came home and asked me to fix his mistake instead of standing by my side, when you chose the easy path of family loyalty over the hard path of doing what was right. He looked at me then, a long, searching look, and for a moment I saw the man I had first fallen for before his father's influence had hardened around him like a shell. But that man was gone. "I should go," he said quietly. "Yes, you should." He walked back to his car, the BMW his father had bought him, and drove away. I left the roses on the asphalt. By evening, their petals had wilted in the heat and were scattering in the wind, just like all of Arthur's carefully laid plans. At midnight, my phone buzzed, an encrypted audio file from Helen Marks. The subject line was just 2 words: my severance. It was a 43-minute recording of an Apex emergency board meeting. The quality was perfect. She must have placed her phone right in the middle of the table. $60 million? It was the voice of Jonathan Cross, a board member. He cost us $60 million because he couldn't control his temper. Then another voice, the CFO, David Sterling. The client database is gone, completely unrecoverable. Nia Blackwood had no authorization to be in those systems. Arthur gave her full administrative credentials. Helen's voice cut in, calm and neutral, against my explicit legal counsel. "You promoted your girlfriend's college roommate?" The disgust in this new voice was palpable. "Christina's roommate? That's who you thought could replace your own daughter-in-law, the woman who built half of this company's infrastructure." When Arthur's voice finally came, it was weak and hollow. Zoe showed initiative. She was ambitious. She was unqualified. A voice roared, "This isn't a family squabble, Vance. You let a personal vendetta escalate into a $60 million catastrophe, and that number is still climbing as clients flee." I listened to the recording one more time, their angry voices filling my small makeshift office in the warehouse. "This isn't leadership," one of them had said. "It's a temper tantrum with a $60 million price tag." The next morning, things moved even faster. "We're holding a press conference," Diana Croft announced, striding into our warehouse at 7 a.m. with a media consultant and enough coffee to fuel a small army. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., every tech journal and business outlet is clamoring for a statement. We're going to give them one." "I don't want to seem vengeful," I said. "You won't," she countered, pulling up her tablet. "You'll seem like exactly what you are, a leader who refused to accept public humiliation as a condition of employment. Meanwhile, Arthur is holding his own press conference at Apex headquarters at the exact same time. My sources say he's going to try to spin this as a strategic restructuring." The thought of Arthur spewing corporate jargon to cover up this mess should have made me angry. Instead, I felt a strange sense of calm. Let him try. The truth has a way of shining through, no matter how much varnish you try to apply. We spent the next day preparing. Ben and Maya helped me draft my statement. Chloe handled the logistics. The Hayes twins somehow rigged up professional lighting that made our warehouse look less like an abandoned factory and more like a legitimate tech hub. At 1:45 p.m. the next day, I stood in front of the cameras, deliberately wearing the same navy blazer I had worn on that Tuesday. My team stood behind me, all 22 of them, a silent, powerful testament to what had happened. "Good afternoon," I began, my voice steadier than my heart rate. 2 weeks ago, Arthur Vance gave me 5 minutes to clear my desk after 6 years of service building Apex Innovation's technical backbone. Those 5 minutes taught me a valuable lesson: that competence is a threat to the incompetent, that loyalty is meaningless to those who have never earned it, and that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is being forced out of a place that never truly valued you. The cameras flashed. A reporter from TechCrunch was typing furiously. The journalist from Bloomberg was live streaming. "Ascendancy Systems isn't just a new company," I continued. "It's proof that a culture built on respect will always outperform a hierarchy built on fear. We've secured $6 million in funding. We have retained clients with contracts worth $30 million annually. We have accomplished in 2 weeks what Apex claimed was impossible because we have the one asset they lost: trust." Across town, my phone, which I'd given to Ben, was lighting up with texts from people watching Arthur's parallel conference. Helen sent a running commentary. He's sweating through his foundation. Zoe is standing behind him, literally scrolling on her phone. I think she's job hunting. He just used the phrase strategic restructuring for enhanced agility, and a reporter actually laughed out loud. Someone else sent a screenshot from one of the financial news networks. They were running a split screen of both press conferences. On one side, me, calm, composed, and surrounded by my team. On the other, Arthur, red-faced and stammering, with Zoe at his side, looking down at her phone, having given up any pretense of paying attention. And below both feeds, the stock ticker for Apex Innovations, down another 8%. We were still celebrating that evening when my phone rang. A blocked number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Please don't hang up." It was Zoe's voice, but stripped of all its saccharine sweetness and practiced confidence. She just sounded young and terrified. "I know you must hate me." "I don't hate you, Zoe," I said, surprised to find it was true. "I feel nothing for you." A sharp intake of breath. "I've been let go. Strategic differences, they're calling it. But everyone knows. I'm being blacklisted. No one will even return my calls." She was openly sobbing now. Ugly, gasping sobs that reminded me she was only 26, a ruthless and ambitious young woman who'd been taught that those were the only qualities that mattered. "I have student loans, my rent, my mom has MS, and I pay for her medical care, and I—" Her voice shattered completely. "I know I took credit for your work. I know what I did. But please, just one recommendation. Just a single sentence saying I'm not a complete failure." I looked around our bustling warehouse, at my team still working late, not because they had to, but because they wanted to, at the whiteboards covered in real innovation, not empty buzzwords, at the community we had built on a foundation of merit. "Zoe," I said, and her crying subsided to sniffles, "you took credit for the Sterling account. You called me overwhelmed and maneuvered to have me replaced. You smiled while my father-in-law gave me 5 minutes to pack up 6 years of my life. Now, you need to take credit for your own failure. That is the only recommendation I can give you." The call lasted exactly 5 minutes. I timed it. 3 days later, the news was everywhere. Arthur Vance steps down as CEO of Apex Innovations. The official press release was a work of art in corporate euphemism, citing a desire to pursue new opportunities and the need for fresh leadership. But the industry knew the truth. The board had given him an ultimatum: resign with a shred of dignity or be fired for cause and lose everything. He chose to jump, but the result was the same. Isabel called me that evening. Her voice was hollow but lighter. "He's moved into the guest house." 35 years of marriage, and this is what broke us. Not the affairs, not the ego so big it needed its own zip code. It was watching him try to destroy you for sport. That's when I knew the man I married was well and truly gone. "Isabel, don't comfort me. This is liberation, Clara, even if it is 30 years too late." The warehouse felt different that night. The Hayes twins had strung up fairy lights that made the concrete walls seem almost warm. Chloe had brought in potted plants that were somehow thriving in the industrial space. David had set up a sound system playing quiet, ambient music. "We did it," Maya said, appearing at my side with 2 glasses of champagne. Not the cheap stuff. Diana had sent over a few cases of the good stuff. Did what? We won. David and Goliath. The little guys taking down the giant. Choose your metaphor. Gerald, the maintenance supervisor from Apex who had quit and joined us the week before, raised his broom in a salute. "To second chances," he called out, "and first-class revenge." Everyone cheered and raised their glasses. But I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about the major contract we had just landed, one that Apex had been trying to secure for 2 years. Global Tech, whose CEO had called me personally and said, "We saw the press conferences. We work with builders, not destroyers." Our valuation had just hit $50 million. Not bad for a company born from pizza boxes and panic in my living room. It's not revenge, I told Maya, watching my team, my chosen family work together. It's just success, the best kind. And somewhere across town, I imagined Arthur Vance, sitting alone in his guest house, his empire in ruins, finally learning the hard way that when you give someone 5 minutes to pack up their life, you'd better be prepared for them to take everything with them. The story of corporate karma had you rooting for justice. Hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when 22 employees silently stood up and followed her out, turning a humiliation into a revolution. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more incredible revenge stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. End of story.